Whenever I meet with a new client, I know there's always a question that's hanging in the air that needs to be answered. And that question is, why should I hire you? And I always think back to 37 years ago when I was a 28-year-old lawyer and I went out on my own and set up an office with 3 files and a part-time secretary. And I would be asked that question, well, Eric Lanigan, why should I hire you? And I didn't say this, but I remember thinking to myself, I have no earthly idea why you would hire me. I'm 28 years old. I don't have any experience. I'm not sure I even know what I'm doing. Now, of course, I never said that. And fortunately for me today, that is not the answer, because I think what's important to a client that I can effectively say today with all honesty and not a hidden answer, and that is that what we bring to the table is experience. I've been in practice for 40 years. My son Roddy has been in practice for 10 years and working with me throughout that period of time. In that 40 years, I've seen every kind of case. I've handled at different stages of my life, criminal cases, family law cases, neither one of which I do now. But it was a great experience and a learning experience, not only about law, but about people and about judges. But I think more important than experience is an attribute that I always felt like was the #1 thing that I found in successful lawyers. And it wasn't necessarily experience. It wasn't necessarily a genius IQ, but it came down to one thing: perseverance. Was somebody prepared to relentlessly pursue the case? And by relentlessly pursue it, I mean it's the same if you're in your office in the middle of the day or you're shaving at 6 o'clock in the morning thinking about different cases and what's going on in those cases. It's a relentless, never letting go of trying to reach a successful conclusion. Another attribute that I think is critical, that I think I've tried to develop and hone over time, is practicality. Am I going to prevail in my case? Am I going to be successful? Is it going to be successfully prosecuted? Is it going to be successfully defended? Am I going to know all the pros and cons of my case? Am I going to have somebody who's not afraid to sit down and say to me, there's a real problem in your case, and here's what it is, and here's how we have to deal with it? I've been sitting in courtrooms before where I looked at the client on my opponent's client, and I remember a case where I looked at the guy and I thought, does that guy have any idea of what's happening to him right now? Because he just sat there like a deer in the headlights. And in my mind anyway, the ultimate conclusion of this case was painfully obvious, and luckily for me it was painfully obvious in my favor, and that result ultimately occurred. And I remember looking at this my adversary's client sitting over there completely befuddled, and I realized the reality was he had just never been really effectively told the real pros and cons of his case, and so when the anvil fell, he was in a state of total shock. And that was one of those lessons that I learned, that yes, it was very nice to win, but the main thing I learned out of that case, which was some 20 years ago, was don't ever let your client be in that situation. Whether you're on the winning side or the losing side, don't ever be there where you look over at your client and you realize they have no idea what just happened or why. And that's one of the most important things a lawyer can do sometimes, is convey bad news. And I'm glad to say that there's one thing that I've learned over the years is it's sort of like, as one lawyer told me one time, he said, bad news is like rotting fish. It's never going to get better, it's only going to get worse. So get it out there and effectively deal with it.